the biggest entrepreneur platform on the planet. This is Business Rockstars.
Well, Michael, thank you for joining us today. You have such an impressive background. You're a 14-time serial entrepreneur. You founded Teladoc. You're a pioneer in telemedicine. You've created tens of billions of dollars in net worth from companies you've started. I know it's probably a lengthy journey, but tell us, how did you get to where you are today?
I think I can actually pin it to two events. One, I'm a very young kid in the Philippines, and I watched Neil and Buzz step out on the moon, 1969. And it inspired me. And since then, I have become a believer that the things that we can accomplish through inspiration far exceed just about anything else. And so, that's made me into a person who's constantly trying to find ways to inspire others, this next generation. The second event is, that particular event occurred when I was in elementary school. So fast forward to the first day of engineering school. Every engineer will tell you this happened. You sit in a large auditorium with all the other engineering students, and the dean comes in, and one of the things that dean will say is, look left, look right. Only one of you will be here at graduation.
Wow.
It's that hard. And I looked left and I saw a valedictorian, and looked right and saw a salutatorian, and I went, oh crap. I graduated number 32 in my class. And the thing that I realized was that it's not really what we did in high school. It's not really how smart we are or how good at grades we've made. It's how hard we work. And how hard we work is directly related to what's driving us. What is that passion point? And so that's how those two things tie together. I saw those two men walking on the moon and went, I am now inspired. And there wasn't anything that was going to stop that progress. And that's why I tell people all the time, if you can get inspired, you'll go as far as you want to go.
That's so true. And that's such a great story. So you're one of the founders of Teladoc. That's a publicly traded $21 billion company on the New York Stock Exchange. Yeah. I'm sure that was a wild ride. Tell us kind of about that journey and how it led you to be the CEO of Recuro Health.
Well, so Teladoc is telemedicine. Everybody sees it that way. And because of COVID, and we all know what telemedicine is. And, but for me, it was telemedicine, but credit where credit is due. The man who really created the first telemedicine product was Jay Sanders, who's an MD who graduated from medical school in the late 60s. And he wanted to solve a problem for one of his professors in the late 60s. So it was a long time between his starting that first project and Teladoc really kicking off or launching what we now see as the telemedicine industry. And but for me, yes, there were technical problems that had to be solved. There really wasn't an electronic medical record when we started Teladoc. And there really wasn't a national doctor network. And but really what we were doing was we were creating efficiency where very little efficiency exists. So in the world of healthcare, efficiency it's just not there that much.
That's so true. So how did that? I'm sure the early days of Teladoc were kind of wild. What was that beginning and that journey like when you kind of took that first step and grew it into such an amazing company?
Well, again, we had the technical problems to solve. We had to figure out an electronic medical record that the doctors could use, et cetera. But in reality, the thing that kept me up at night were the boards of medical examiners saying, Gorton, if you build this, you will go to prison. And so overcoming that barrier was the really tough one. And I think, in what the boards of medical examiners saw was physicians remotely treating patients and writing prescriptions. And that created a lot of uneasiness, because that would be an easy path then for getting OxyContin or, name your narcotic. And, we created the Teladoc model specifically so those things wouldn't happen. But just the concept of a physician treating a patient they've never touched was difficult for the boards of medical examiners. And I think in retrospect, looking back at it, the fact that there really haven't been med mal incidents, and just about everything that's been treated has gone well. The approval ratings for telemedicine are typically in the 90% range, whereas the approval ratings for normal healthcare are 40s and 50% range. So, it's working. And I think the boards of medical examiners ultimately got that. But it was a long journey and many nights of, oh no, is tomorrow the day?
Wow. I can't even imagine someone telling me that. How did you have a fear of failure when you heard that? And if so, entrepreneurs daily face kind of a fear of failure. How did you overcome it?
Right. Well, remember, I told the story, I looked left and I looked right. And so, yes, of course, there's always that fear, but you can't let it drive you. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to take the pioneering route, and there will always be challenges. Hopefully I never see anything like, if you build this, you'll go to prison again. That's really hard on the family and the fiber and everything else.
Yeah.
But the reality is, tracing that, Teladoc was really about efficiency, to Recuro, which is where we are now, I think is an important story, because the things that we accomplished at Teladoc and the things that Jason Gorvick, who's now running Teladoc, has continued to accomplish have been pretty profound. But the one thing we haven't done is we haven't turned our healthcare system into a healthcare system. And what I mean by that is, if you want a high-end physical, the entity that's going to pay will say that's an out-of-pocket expense. If you want to do a genomics exome panel, so you get a baseline, they're going to say that's an out-of-pocket expense. If you want to preemptively test for things, that's an out-of-pocket expense. But the minute you get diagnosed with heart disease or cancer or anything else, they're there for you, full strength. To me, that's a sick care system. They do nothing for you until you're sick.
Right.
I'm not a tinfoil hat person, but my tinfoil hat friends will tell you, follow the money. They don't make money until you're sick.
Right.
What we need is an efficient way of catching things before they become expensive, before they change your life. When you go into the doctor and the doctor says, Brittany, you now have stage 3 cancer, your life is forever changed. You may win the battle, but there will be things, quality of life things, that will never return. And the goal is to never have that.
Right.
People don't realize 50% of the Americans who find out they have heart disease find out when they're having their first heart attack. Why is that? We should be able to catch these things earlier on. And so that's the purpose of Recuro. Let's take the efficiency that we learn how to use at Teladoc and see if we can't catch cancer before it becomes stage 1, catch heart disease before you have your first heart attack, catch these things when it's not expensive to turn them around. That's what we're doing.
And it makes sense. Your company is being proactive instead of reactive to something.
Right.
And And it's such an amazing company, and it's what should be in place. You guys just raised a Series A about a month ago. How does a company scale to a point where they can raise $15 million? Which I know is
and the correction point is, so the Series A is a sort of an interesting story because it came right on the tails of a seed round that was supposed to be 2, and it oversubscribed to 2.9. And then we said, okay, what we're doing works. Let's go out and raise 10 million. And then it became 12. Then it became 15. And in reality, Brittany, where we are right now is 17. So we're done with the capital raise, but it grew. So how did it? And you know, we came off of the heels of the world now knows what telemedicine is. The world now knows what Teladoc is, and so we have the ability to say, hey, we started that, and by starting it, we have credibility. So people who bet on us once and made money, or people who saw that money being made, looked at it and said, okay, we understand what you're doing, and we've seen you do it once, therefore we'll help you do it again.
That's amazing. You know, my next question is, do you think telemedicine is here to stay? And where do you see it in the next 5 or 10 years, kind of evolving?
Right. So absolutely, telemedicine is here to stay. The people in the South will get this analogy, but here in Texas, we have things called fire ants. They're terrible. They're just these little tiny speck of a creature, but they get on you and bite you, and you remember it for a week. The pain is that bad. But it's a simple problem in reality. You walk out in your front yard, you see this mound of dirt, and you don't want your child or your pet to step in it. And because if they do, there will be problems. And so you go in your garage, because everybody who's seen fire ants has something in their garage, a teaspoon, you put it on the fire ant mound, they're gone. In healthcare, you go out in your front yard, you see this mound, and you call it Pentagon, and they send a platoon with air support and tanks. You know, that's how they solve problems. It's not efficiency. Telemedicine is simple problem, simple solution. It costs less, it's faster, everybody makes more money. It is a demonstration of efficiency. Yes, telemedicine is here to stay. It will only get better. Companies like Teladoc and Amwell are kind of hurting on the market right now. I believe they'll turn around because what they're doing is important to the infrastructure. It is a component. It won't replace everything, but it is an important piece of efficiency in healthcare.
Absolutely. So pivoting a little bit, you've written multiple books. Kind of tell us about, I guess, your favorite book that you've written, and give our audience some key takeaway points.
Yeah. Well, my favorite book is just a fun one. It's actually this book right here, which is called Forefathers and Founding Fathers. And when I was a little kid, my dad said, "Oh, we had a forefather who was always in trouble in the early colonies, and he was getting whipped and things like that." And so I started doing the research, and it turns out he's one of the co-founders of the state of Rhode Island. And so I grew up poor. You know, I didn't know anybody of any substance. And as I came out of college and started doing the research that became this book, I realized that there was somebody important in the past who did something. And my guess is just about everybody has somebody like that. I was just lucky enough to be able to find the roots of the story and trace it to Lucille Ball from I Love Lucy is a cousin of mine. And Thomas Edison is a cousin of mine because I had a forefather in the early colonies, and you know the family line grew. So that was the fun one. The other one over here on the other side of my clock is Broken Handoff, and that's where I tell some of the stories that I'm passionate about getting on podcasts like this, because I recognize you don't get here on your own. You get here because you have good mentors and people that are willing to stop and help and promote you along the way. And so that was one of the goals of that book, was to give some of the advice and share some of the stories. And so a lot of the Teladoc story is in Broken Handoff. And both of them have been Amazon bestsellers. Forefathers actually made it to #1. And so
Congratulations.
It's fun stuff.
Amazing. I think a lot of people, or people who are just starting out in their career, might look at you as a person who's like unattainable and just kind of intimidating because of the success that you've had. What advice would you give someone who's just starting out, maybe fresh out of college, or even doesn't have a college degree, went to high school? What would you tell them if they wanted to start their own business?
Well, I actually have a very fundamental set of principles. The first thing is you have to start with a good plan. And sometimes it's hard to find that. I mean, you drink the Kool-Aid and you believe that your plan is a good one. So run it by some people that you trust. And if you ascertain that it really is a good plan, remember, it's not the plan that makes a successful company. I mean, shoot, how much did that guy in the 70s or 80s make on pet rocks? I mean, he was selling a rock, but he made a lot of money.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just the right place, the right time. But the next thing you have to have be past the plan is the right people. And no one person can do it on their own. And so you have to find people who are smarter than you, and you have to listen to them when they give you advice. I think the best way of saying it is you can be friends outside the boardroom, inside the boardroom where you're giving and taking business advice. You have to leave your ego on the other side. You cannot bring your personal ego into any business conversations. Listen to the smart people that you surround yourself with. And then the last thing is every single business is going to have tough moments. And so no matter how hard it gets, don't give up. Calvin Coolidge, one of our former presidents, wrote a thing on persistence, and I give it to the young entrepreneurs all the time. And if anybody's listening and they want to look it up, just look up Coolidge and persistence, and you'll find it. But I think persistence can rule the world if you have the right people and the right plan. And that's 3 P's actually.
Yeah.
It's the plan, it's the people, and persistence.
You should trademark it. So I read that you like to work with early growth stage entrepreneurs who have industry changing ideas, and you like to kind of help them avoid the potholes in the road.
Right.
So what are those big potholes that oftentimes entrepreneurs see? I'm sure there's some ones that kind of happen multiple times. What are those potholes and how do you help them?
Well, a lot of people will tell you in the beginning, this can't be done, or if it could be done, like Teladoc is a good example. Everybody said in the beginning, even my friends said, I'm not writing a check for this. And these are people I had made money for already. They said, it's a stupid idea. I'm not writing a check for this. I like to remind those people now when, one of my favorite stories is a guy named Gary who wrote a $25,000 check that's worth over $5 million now.
Wow.
And so, but the big potholes are people looking at it who are experts, and they're telling you it'll never work. If it would work in the case of Teladoc, United Healthcare, or Blue Cross, or one of these big giants would do it. And the reality is we are disruptors. Those of us who live in the entrepreneurial world are always looking for ways to disrupt, change, make better. And the big guys, they don't live in the disruption world. If you're successful, they'll come by you later. And but the biggest thing is, if you have something, don't let the experts talk you out of it.
That's so true. And that's such great advice. So you're also the chairman of Back to Space. Tell us about that company.
Oh my gosh. So there's a place where there's great passion. And so now go back to Neil and Buzz walking on the moon. So it inspired me. And a few years ago, a young lady named Danielle Russa came to me and said, I want to build this thing. Will you help? Well, the cool thing about Danielle is her grandfather went to the moon. So how many of us can say that?
Right.
So Stuart Russo was the command module pilot on Apollo 14. And, for me, in order to spend a lot of time with the company, it has to have a way to make a return for our investors, and it has to change the world. And I think with Back to Space, we've accomplished that. We're building a facility that will be an international go-to facility, but it's being structured around corporate events. You know how corporations like to bring their senior management on retreats, and they're always looking for cool places. So we're designing this facility, which will be the largest map of anything on the planet, but also the map will be a map of the moon. But it'll have augmented reality and virtual reality and all this cool technology. It'll be designed so that corporations can come there and do their events. And when they're not doing that, we can inspire anybody.
I love it. That's amazing. So a lot of times people like to hear from a successful person like you, what's in kind of your entrepreneurial toolbox, whether that's a favorite app you have that kind of helps you stay on track, or meditation every day. Do you have any tips or hacks for our audience?
Well, so being an entrepreneur is not a full-time job. It is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But you also have to have balance. And it's one of the hardest things for those of us who are just totally driven to find balance. How do you stop and focus on your kids, focus on your spouse, maintain the human pieces of balance at the same time that you're pushing yourself all the time to the max. You're like a marathon runner. And so you have to watch what you eat. If you gain weight, if you start doing things that are unhealthy, you're not going to be as efficient. And so everything is driven around, my gosh, I said this word efficiency when I was talking about Teladoc and talking about Recuro. You have to have efficiency. And so that's what I would say is that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to be 24 hours a day, but you've got to figure out ways to focus on the other things that make you whole while you're changing the world.
That's great advice. And it is important to focus on yourself to make sure you keep the ship running. Where can people learn more about you if they would like?
So LinkedIn, I think, is a good place. Either one of the two books we talked about, Forefathers and Founding Fathers, or Broken Handoff. I would like to say I'm always looking for young entrepreneurs that I can help, but there's only so many hours in the day, and sometimes I can find time to help that way, and sometimes I can't. But it's something that I really like doing.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure hearing this interview, so many will be inspired, and you left some amazing tips for our audience. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
My last question, where do you see Recuro Health in the next 5 years?
Well, there's a club called the 3 Comma Club. I say that to a lot of people and they go, well, what's the 3 Comma Club? And that's people that are so wealthy that they have 3 commas in their personal valuation. So if you're in the millions, you're basically, what you want to do is be in the billions. And we got Teladoc into the billions, and so that's where I want Recuro. It would be really fun for Recuro to get bigger than Teladoc. And nothing against Teladoc, I love them, and it's my baby, but I want to build a bigger one now.
Well, I'm sure you'll get there. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. It was really a pleasure, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you.